Hello, Internet! Welcome to...
Hey, Weer'd!
Oh, yes, Aaron?
Why are there only 239 beans in Irish bean soup?
I don't know, Aaron.
Because otherwise, it'd be too farty.
Aaron, normally I would be upset at you interrupting me, but for a fart joke, glorious.
Plus, this is gonna drop for our patrons on St. Patrick's Day. Look at the Irish to you.
We are absolutely horrible at looking ahead at what days this is going to drop, and you did it today, so wonderful. I didn't, but thank you so much for doing that. So, welcome to episode 241 of the Assorted podcast, the Second Amendment podcast. And a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight, you've already heard her. She's the greatest hostess in the whole world. She is the greatest voice of the Second Amendment. I don't care what the others say. And she is a lovely birthday girl, Erin Paulette. How you doing, Erin?
Well, I'm no longer a summer chicken. I have officially become a fall chicken now. And then I know some smartass is gonna go, 29 again.
As I've said, you're officially in middle age when they double your age and you go, oh, if they died at that age, if someone died at that age, what do you say? Oh, it's a good run.
Yeah. But I want to give a shout out to Oddball, who very kindly bought me a .50 caliber for my birthday.
Wait, that's a big spending, Aaron. The .50 caliber guns are expensive.
Oh yeah, not just that. It's a Barrett .50 cal.
Oh my goodness. I know the punchline to this joke. I can't keep the bit alive, but tell us about your Barrett, Aaron.
It's a toy. It's 1/3 scale, it says, which seems kind of small to me. I would have thought that a Barrett would be bigger, but it's very cute, and there'll be a picture of it in the show notes. But it's a little toy, and I can put a scope on it. And the best part is that it comes with little teeny bullets that I can load into the magazine, and I can load the magazine into the rifle. And oh, it's so precious.
It is a goat gun for those that are aware. They advertise heavily, so chances are you have seen their products on various places where ads are thrust in your face. But yeah, they are super duper cool. I would say that I would probably have one if they made an FAL, but I don't think they do. If they do, someone will send me a link to it, and then my wallet will come out of my pocket and money will go away because I really want an FAL goat gun. They do make a 1911 for whatever reason. I don't want it.
Well, you've got the real thing.
I've got several of the real things, and I carry them daily.
But on the other hand, you've got a real FAL too, and you still want one. So I don't. Once again, Weer'd makes no sense.
I think it would be more fun to play with a teeny tiny rifle than play with a teeny tiny handgun, just because the handgun might be a little bit more awkward since, especially thinking about like if you're handling like a subcompact handgun, it's one of those like, I got only so much room to hold on to this thing. Well, now make it 1/3 scale or whatever scale that they want to, they make them at. I am more concerned that it will be much more functional to have an FAL.
So that's how I'm doing. How are you doing, Weer'd?
I'm doing similarly okay. we had our mental health week again. Publicly must thank David and Oddball for bringing the magic. You guys did great. It was a good show. I didn't listen to all of it, but I listened to a good chunk of it, and it was. I was more than happy. But yeah, Aaron and I we were both in crappy, unbelievably crappy moods. come last week, and
if you listen to our mag dump, you'll know why.
Yes, yeah, that mag dump is I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it.
It honestly, it felt like a very special mag dump. It just kind of had the after school special vibe to it. At least to me. Perhaps I'm strange.
I blame Matt from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns because he booked me for Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and I was running a little bit late, and so my phone started ringing with the Skype call that we do it on, and I answered it, and it was Liberty, and I said, hold on, I'm just making a drink. I'll be down in like 2 minutes, and she said, oh, that's fine, and I came down, and then called in, and it was Matt that answered, and he says, okay, yeah, cool. He says, Liberty just went and got herself a drink, and then she came in, we got talking a little bit, and he goes, all right, guys, have fun. And then he took off. And I went, oh, okay. And so, yeah, Liberty took charge, and it was just me and her talking about, essentially talking about anti-gun talking points and the best ways to combat them. Essentially, a Weer'd audio fist type primer. And I'm very pleased with that episode as well. If you haven't listened to Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and especially if you like the Weer'd audio fists, go check that one out. Liberty did an amazing job, and I'm like, I really like this space. And so, yeah, when you were having your crappy week, it was very much mag dump material. And I will just say it has to do with a lot of anti-trans news that is coming out that understandably upset you. And I said, you want to talk about that? You're like, yeah. And you're like, I don't want it to be a big free-for-all mag dump. And I thought, nah, I don't want that to be either. I don't want it to be watered down with other topics and talking about guns and shooting and random squirrel moments. And so I just said, hey guys, I know, I mean, everybody else wanted in, and I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, I think this would be best with just Aaron and I, and it was a good decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, you were having a crappy week. I was having a crappy week. For those with kids, you will understand the stress that comes from transitions, and there was a whole bunch of chaos being thrown into my life, and my daughter did not deal with it well, and I didn't deal with it well, and you sent me a message on Monday morning going, I'm not feeling it. I'm in a really bad mood. And I said, you know what? We don't have to do it. And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. The weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. It was the best choice. And so I slacked off all week. And then things are slowly getting better for me, but I am just not recovering very quickly. But I am starting to feel like myself again. And, I know you're also slow to recover. We were talking a little bit before the show started.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, we're back, and we got a good show for y'all.
It's so cute that you try.
I can speak your language. Donde está la biblioteca? But yes, so shall we dive into the main topic?
Yeah, so speaking of speaking their language, I know that it was sometime last year we talked about how all the major credit card companies had developed a new merchant code for gun shops, and now they're suddenly changing their mind. And I think it's because someone spoke the language of ka-ching.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of someone spoke the language of ka-ching. I think also, there was this was covered heavily in this week's The Reload podcast, where they were talking about most of these merchant codes are done at the behest of the credit card companies and other industry groups, such as, there's a merchant code for buying airline tickets, and that's how you get your Sky Miles and other things like that. And there's merchant codes for buying gasoline, and I've got a credit card that gives me cash back for gasoline and groceries and things like that. So it is designed for rewards and benefits, and Nobody in the firearms industry wanted this. And this was entirely pushed by anti-gun people. And so it was done not as rewards, but as
punishment.
Yeah, I would go even a step further and say as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And to extrapolate even further on that theory is that it's a bit of an empty threat. And of course, we talked about this before. When I talked about this before, I did mention that while it is not good because people who are our enemies and people who hate us want this, and so therefore it's always good to see it as a threat. From every bit of data that I've heard about this, it's not much of a threat because this code is the data produced from it, to speak in scientific terms, is extremely dirty. Namely,
yeah, it doesn't tell you what was bought, just that you bought something at a gun store. You could go in and buy beef jerky, and that would be it.
And furthermore, it didn't go through. So I believe, does Walmart still have FFLs? I'm trying to remember. So many of these big.
Lord, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, so many of these big sporting goods stores are dumping their gun department. So I don't remember if Walmart has it anymore or if Dick's Sporting Goods is still doing it. I was in a Dick's actually the other day with
boo,
yeah.
Boo this man.
we did it.
But okay,
the escalator in the mall was broken, and I'm like, I bet there's one in there. And my daughter was like, I want to look in this store, and she just walked in, literally like looked, and was like, okay, I'm done.
So as of the end of November of last year, Walmart still sold guns.
Okay, so but either way, Walmart, if you bought a gun at Walmart, it would not have triggered this merchant code. I know for a fact that LL Bean, at least their flagship store in Maine, still holds an FFL and still has a gun room where you can go buy rifles. They do not sell handguns, unfortunately. Mr. Handgun Radio is like, boo. But you can buy rifles at LL Bean, and that merchant code would not show up as a firearm purchase thing. But at the same time, your local gun shop may will have the merchant code of guns, and you might have didn't our friend Dennis, didn't he sell brewing supplies out of his gun shop?
I think so.
I think so as well. So like I mean, there's some crazy people at the gun shop. One of my favorite gun shops in the area is called Coin Collectors. It's in Stoneham, Massachusetts. I highly recommend them. And it's called Coin Collectors because it was a coin shop. It was a numismatist shop, and the guy also had a thing for collecting guns. And so he got an FFL and started selling guns on the side. And after a while, the guy who started the numismatist, he got old and retired, sold it to the current guy. The current guy had no interest in coins and is making all its money selling guns and ammo. So it just turned into a complete gun shop.
Without changing the name.
It's called Collector's Guns in some of the like on the website and things like that, but it was originally Coin Collectors Gallery, is the name of it. And I believe that is the sign over the door. But I think they have done a little bit of rebranding in places like where people might be searching, so that people looking for guns and people not looking for coins will go to the right direction. So you'll have gun stores selling all sorts of stuff. I mean, I've gone into gun shops and spent hundreds of dollars and not walked out with a single gun. Buy gun safe, cleaning supplies, ammunition. I mean, you can spend a lot on ammunition, reloading supplies, etc. And then you've got the strange gun shops where they're like, yeah, they might have a humidor, so you might go into a gun shop and spend $200 on cigars. Either way, the merchant, there's a million and one ways where the merchant codes are getting rung up for all of this money, and it's not going to tell them crap. There was some talk about being able to track spree killers, but even their behavior is not particularly telltale. And so I think what happened was, because of the political antagonism going on between the pro-gun side and the anti-gun side that wanted and didn't want this merchant code, and the fact that this merchant code is absolutely worthless to everybody. The credit card companies have planned to pause that, and good riddance.
Well, I also want to point out that the Attorney General for the state of Montana had been spearheading an effort with 23 other state attorneys general to tell these credit card companies, don't do this. And that is very close to the number of states that are permitless or constitutional carry. Now, I can't draw a one-to-one correlation, and of course, correlation does not indicate causation, but I think it's not a coincidence, and I think that the more states which become constitutional carry, the better chance we have of fighting against garbage like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is certainly this is something that we are seeing right now in the political landscape, which is that states are very much drawing up lines on you are either a pro-gun state or you're an anti-gun state, and the pro-gun states are getting much more pro-gun. To the point of what would be considered extremist behavior, 10 years ago, where they're getting rid of their permitless carry, they're getting rid of their carry permit requirements, and they're adding in sanctuaries, and the sheriff's department is saying that they won't enforce federal gun laws, and all of these things are going through where it's just it is getting into like the rabid flag waving Second Amendment supporters in the pro-gun states, and then the anti-gun states are getting completely nutty, where they are just doubling down their bans. They're saying, oh, well, you're going to have concealed carry. Well, we're going to make it so that the entire island of Manhattan is a gun-free zone, and other nonsense that's being challenged by the court, but they're doing their best. So it's certainly goes with the climate that the states that are pro-gun are shoring it up. And honestly speaking, I think it's just the more states that allow more freedom to gun owners and are realizing that nothing bad is happening. This is fine. You get rid of just like in the 90s when suddenly it's one of those like, oh, we should allow people to carry loaded firearms. Oh, you can't do that. There'll be shootouts over parking spaces.
Blood in the streets.
Correct. And then large states like Florida and Texas, who had concealed carry had been illegal for years, suddenly became legal and no problems happened. And then fast forward a few decades, and now states are going, let's just not require the piece of paper. You can still have it if you want, but it's not required by law. Oh no, people will be untrained. People will be complete idiots. There'll be accidental discharges and people claiming self-defense, and gangbangers will be going free because they will have their gun in their waistband and the cops can't do anything about it. And it's all nonsense. The more you see where people allow this to happen and nothing bad happens, the more people go, oh, maybe this gun control thing is full of crap. And I would argue another great example of why gun control is full of crap and shows that gun control is just absolutely worthless is when it happens in places that have extremely strict gun laws, and yet somehow the people think that it's not good, which leads me to this headline: Fury in Germany as Hamburg shooting brings lax gun laws into focus. And welcome to Crazy Town. First up, actually, I hadn't even heard about this shooting. Had you heard about this?
No, but for entirely personal reasons, my head has basically been up my rear end for the entire week. So, no.
Yep, but no, evidently last week at a Jehovah's Witness hall in, how do you pronounce that city? I've heard it pronounced many different ways.
Hamburg?
Okay, thank you. And I don't know how the Germans do the H. But so in Hamburg there was a Jehovah's Witness hall, and this person went in. Doesn't say what in this, at least in the reports that I'm looking at here, doesn't say what kind of gun that they were using. And they shot a bunch of people. How many were dead? That doesn't matter. I'm not going to look.
Well, it says that there were 36 people inside.
Yep.
I don't yet know how many were killed. The thing that gets me is that, and this is just this particular article, which is written by The Guardian, so you know what that means. But they're talking about the killer who, and this is a quote, was attempting to systematically murder 36 people inside with bursts of fire from his semi-automatic Heckler & Koch P30. So, I know, all the gun owners, bursts of fire, semi-auto.
Maybe they just got confused with the VP70. But, yeah, and again, the statement is, they're calling for tighter gun laws in Germany, which they openly admit in this has some of the strictest gun laws in Europe.
Okay, interrupting you briefly. According to this, no one was killed immediately. 9 of them were injured, 4 seriously, but the problem is that Jehovah's Witnesses oppose blood transfusions. And so some of them may die from blood loss. Mm-hmm. But as of this moment, or at least as of this article, which was on Saturday, no one has died.
But
Yes, I'm sorry, you were talking about firearm laws in Germany.
Yes, and I mean, it sounds like, obviously this guy had some mental issues because no sane man does what he did.
Well, that's true. The thing is, say it with me now, the perpetrator was known to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. They literally came and talked to him. They did an inspection of his home because that's the storage laws in Germany. You have to be prepared for basically surprise inspections. And the only thing they did, they cited him because there was a round of ammunition which was not in the safe. It was on top of the safe. But, they were literally there talking to him and did nothing.
And by the way, he was cited for a single 9mm round sitting on top of his safe, says the man who is looking up at the magazines and boxes of ammo that are sitting on top of my safe right here in the armory. And the cases of ammo just sitting on shelves. Because I don't care. My daughter's not going to shoot herself with a case of 7.62 by 51. Mm-hmm. So the guns are locked up, and some of them are loaded because I just listened to the Brady Campaign podcast just dropped the other day, and they were talking about, you should definitely, if you're going to have a gun in your car, it should be safely stored, and we consider that locked up in a locking device with the ammunition locked up in a separate location. It's one of those like, okay, cool, because you guys hate defensive gun use, so let's make sure that can never happen. But there was some anonymous tip that this person was having a psychological issue. The police showed up, and of course the police are not, psychiatrists. They are not capable of diagnosing mental illness. Very, very few people are. My daughter had a therapist, and the therapist was like, you should probably go see this doctor because they can diagnose her, because I can't. I have some theories. They were all wrong too. And so she had to go to a different doctor for an evaluation. So this person was spoken to by the police. Evidently, he was in pretty good shape because the only thing they cited him for was a single 9mm round on top of the safe.
And it was just a verbal warning.
Yeah, which, by the way, kudos to you German cops for not raking him over the damn coals for a single stupid 9mm round. Ugh. I hate defending a killer or an attempted murderer, and a nut like this. It's clearly not a good person, but at the same time, 2 wrongs don't make a right, and your gun laws are evil. And which leads me to just the larger point, is that all of these insanely anti-gun countries. Canada, I mean, we were talking with Ian Runkle about this extensively, the amount of crap Justin Trudeau is putting the Canadian people through because he is an anti-gun lunatic. And Canada's gun laws 5 years ago were insane. Canada's gun laws would make Californians, would make people in Massachusetts, would make people in New York disgusted at how draconian they were. And yet Canada is pushing more and more gun control, and they are having violent crime issues. And England is pushing for, they haven't been pushing for a ton more gun control. They're now like arresting people for carrying screwdrivers in their pockets. But they are unhappy with their gun laws. Australia has been constantly calling for new gun laws, and their gun laws are insane. And of course, here we have Germany calling for stricter gun laws because guess what? Bad people are going to do bad things. And this clearly shows that gun control doesn't work even a little bit, and the anti-gunners will be unhappy with it. Meanwhile, Maine got rid of their requirement for their concealed carry permit. You can buy machine guns. You can buy suppressors. You can open carry. You can concealed carry. And guess what? It's the safest state in the union. New Hampshire is the most gun-friendly place in the known universe. It is, I can't remember. I think it's neck and neck with Maine. It is the safest place in the country. And I haven't seen statistics done towards like region versus region, but I've got to imagine it may be one of the safest places in the world outside of like private islands.
If only it weren't so butt-numbingly cold up there.
I mean, it is butt-numbingly cold. I mean, right now it's just chilly and drearily damp. The weather sucks in the winter here. Oh, not like those lovely Florida winters. But that's why all those Yankees go down there.
Yeah, we call them snowbirds. And there's a very pardon me?
That's exactly what we call them as well.
Yeah, and there is a very common bumper sticker. If it's called snowbird season, why can't we hunt them?
Just don't eat them. They're very stringy. So yeah, this is just another. I mean, again, we our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of this. Hopefully they will pull through. Again, Jehovah's Witnesses refuse blood transfusions, and I remember actually asking Kelly Grayson. I'm like, so do you guys ever, what do you do in the case of a Jehovah's Witness that is bleeding out? And he just goes, we say looks like a Baptist to me, save their life. But in this case, they were killed in their house of worship or attacked in their house of worship. And so it would be probably much less, the plausible deniability of recognizing the tenets of their faith is a lot higher. And so the risks to them because of the limitations, which is it's a variation on the kosher laws of not to consume blood, it will be an issue, and hopefully they will all make a pleasant recovery from this. So, but I really wanted to point it out on the idea that we have the anti-gunners in this state talking about, we'll get Joe Biden. No, what we really need to do is to ban assault weapons. It was so great when I banned them in 94. Well, first up, that's a lie. It didn't do anything. But also, second up, you're not going to be happy. You're just going to move on to the next thing, because these guys have banned damn near everything. Interestingly enough, there was a statistic here. Though Germany has some of the strictest gun laws in Europe, it has a high per capita ratio of legally purchased firearms. About 1 million people can legally own more than 5 million guns. And the fact that it was 1 million to 5 million, I believe there is, on most permits, you're only allowed to own 5 firearms. In Germany, they have an arsenal limit. That was actually one reason why the SIG P250, which became later is the basis for the 320, the chassis gun, was one theory why that was made that way, was because if you are German, if you buy one of those, you can have a compact 9mm, or you can have a full-size 45, or any combination thereof by mixing and matching of parts without ever running afoul with the limitations that you are on owning guns. So their laws are absolutely kooky. Again, this guy could have been charged for having a single round of 9mm on top of his safe. Versus how many of you got a single round of 9mm rolling around on the floorboards of your car. This is
I've got at least 2 rounds of 223 on my floor right now.
Yeah. I'm holding a live 50 BMG right now because it sits on my desk. It is a paperwork. It is a paperweight. It is a conversation piece. It's right beside my mermaid knife.
But is it next to Sassy Hound? That's the question.
Oh no! Sassy Hound's over there. They're nearby.
Okay. Sassy Hound adjacent.
Sassy Hound adjacent. That is the Transformer that you got me for Christmas because you're amazing, Aaron. Oh my God, you fulfilled a childhood wish and you picked a good one. And then my daughter posed him in a very, very sassy pose. And I'm like, I can't transform him again, as fun as it is. So this just is a prime example of, we have examples here where repealing damn near every gun control law except for the federal stuff has caused very, very low levels of crime. And then we have, again, Germany had a mass shooting. There was one in Austria. There's one in Denmark. There's been a ton of shootings in Europe, and yet they have every gun control law imaginable, like even more so than anything we have here in the States. And they're saying it's not enough. We need more. Guess what? That's never going to end. And so this is why we fight. It's not because we're heartless. It's not because we love guns more than we love the lives of children or whatever nonsense they want to say. It is because it doesn't work. It's you are sacrificing freedom and safety. And no, let's not do that. All right. Time to shift gears again, talking about more dumb gun laws. I sat down with Marty Hayes of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network to talk about firearms insurance and its legalities. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast the president of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, Marty Hayes. How you doing, Marty?
Doing fine, thank you.
So you seem to be the perfect guy. This is a subject that I've wanted to talk about, and I've mentioned briefly as it comes up in the news, but I am probably not... I probably don't have the level of expertise that you do on this subject matter. There is a number of areas. I know that there's a couple of towns in California, and I believe Illinois is trying to implement it, but laws that state that and of course you hear about it all over the place, laws that are stating that gun owners need to carry insurance. And one of the key factors is that there's no such thing as this. And there's a lot of talk that it may not exist for any number of reasons. And so what is your overall feeling on the cases that you've seen?
Well, it's very interesting. You know, they want gun owners to be insured, but they don't really know what they want. Insured for what? Negligence? Recklessness? You pretty much cannot insure an intentional act that causes injury to another, at least if that act was criminal. And so we don't know what they're really asking for. You'd have to read each individual bill that is put in front of a state legislature or a county or city ordinance, and then you'd have to decide whether or not you can actually get insurance for that. As far as I know, there are not insurance companies out there yet who are providing that type of insurance. So it's all fairly nebulous at this point.
I mean, that's one of the big sticking points is that when it comes to firearms at all, when you look at the statistics, I mean, the number of accidental gun deaths and injuries is statistically almost non-existent. It's extremely small numbers of people who are harmed or even killed by firearms in any given year. Pretty much all injuries by firearms are intentional acts. And is that even legal to have any sort of insurance that would cover that?
In our research, we have found that pretty much all the case law says that you cannot insure bodily injury or death due to an intentional act. If you intentionally shoot someone and they die, you can't have insurance for that. But then the funny thing is there are places who want you to have insurance just for that, but they don't have a clue. I have seen the couple California cases come up. I think I'll do a little more research on that. And if I find out anything compelling, I can get back together with you at some future date and discuss it.
Yeah, excellent. That seems to be the big issue they've got is I don't think there's even anything specifically written out in the laws, because I've actually skimmed through them myself and heard other people talking about them, and they're just specifying that insurance must be carried. But of course, there's no insurance company that gives the insurance, and there's nothing that goes through. And again, what would it be for? It can't be done towards negligence, and obviously we have ACLDN for that, for if in the event that you harm someone in self-defense, that's not really something that you need to be covering because it's the other person's fault that you had to defend yourself. And so I even wonder if it's similar to the California microstamping law, where they require guns to have microstamping, but no one offers microstamping, so therefore no guns can be approved.
Yeah, gee, that's not unusual.
No, it is not. It certainly seems that right now they're in the discovery phase of trying to figure out how to implement it in the areas where it has been implemented. And of course, Illinois is currently under Supreme Court oversight on whether or not the law is legal in the first place. But as far as you know, there's nothing that could comply with these laws in existence. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Yeah, so we'll just have to keep our feelers out as if things go further on this. Thank you so much for lending your insight, Marty Hayes of the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network.
So this is going to be seriously dating myself because it was, I think it was like around 2012, 2013, back when we thought the NRA was on our side. Mm-hmm. And I think it was around the time of the Sandy Hook killing, and people were talking about how we need to require, firearm insurance, gun owners insurance, however you want to phrase it. And I think this was before things like ACLDN came into existence. I'm not entirely sure. But one of the things I said, and the people who were making these claims suddenly got very quiet about that. I said, okay, I'm pretty sure that there will be an organization that will be happy to do that, and I can almost guarantee you that it'll come with a year's membership with the NRA. And, they didn't like that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, NRA tried to do its own insurance thing. And, let's not get into that. But the point being was,
I believe theirs was actually insurance. Marty didn't name names, but
they failed.
Yes, but I know one of the NRA's Carry Guard, which is not existing anymore, so therefore I can talk as much crap as I want about it because it did fail. It was awful, and one of the reasons why it was awful was it was insurance, which meant that you would go to trial. They may supply lawyers and expert witnesses and all that. I didn't look too deep into it, but essentially you would go through the full trial. You would go into debt. You would mortgage your home. You would do all of those things. And then if you were exonerated, if you were found not guilty of the charges, then they would cut you a fat check for your legal expenses, and only then. It's not like ACLDN and your USCCA where you find yourself in a jail cell. You can make one phone call. I'm not calling my wife. I'm not calling that. I'm calling Marty, and they're like, Marty, okay, here you go. I'm gonna need a lawyer, and I'm gonna need you to call my wife, whose numbers are on my and let her know where I am, and let's see what the best situation is here.
But the point that I'm making here is that the typical people who said we should have this, and I said, okay, be careful what you ask for, because what you may end up doing is boosting the ranks of the NRA, and suddenly their desire for that kind of insurance evaporated. So it was, once again, an example of anti-gunners not arguing in good faith.
Mm-hmm. And furthermore, it still hasn't materialized exactly what they're calling for. We have the San Jose, California law that's in place that has not been implemented. It's there, it's on the books, but there is no insurance for you to get, and so therefore they're not requiring it. But there's no call on what this insures, what this does, what's going on. As far as I know, the closest they've gotten is essentially they're talking about it's just a tax. It's just you pay money and we give money to gun control groups. And that's that. And if you end up having to use your gun in self-defense, or you wrongfully kill somebody, or you have an accident, or you shoot yourself, or whatever, I don't know. But any of the things that could be actionable, there's nothing for that. And as Marty notes, a lot of those instances might be illegal. So that's the reason why fully underwritten insurance can't pay out until your trial is over, because you're not allowed to finance illegal behavior. So if in fact you shot somebody in the back that was unarmed and then told the cops, oh yeah, they were trying to mug me, and then you realize you've got no evidence and there's all sorts of evidence to the contrary and all that, and you go to jail, no payment, because they can't charge for the legal defense of a criminal. So either way, this is stupid gun laws.
I mean, it's probably opening a can of worms, but is there really anything that isn't a stupid gun law? Or, are there any gun laws which aren't stupid?
I would argue that the prohibition of violent felons is not particularly stupid. I would argue that it is poorly implemented and need of a heavy amount of reform, but its heart was in the right place. But
I can see your point.
But and even then, we're into, that's one of those instances, felons with violent felons, specifically violent felons, because again, Martha Stewart, I don't care. She's not a threat to me. I'm not going to eat her cooking. That's the only way she's going to harm me. But I love making that dig at Martha. But the idea that violent felons having guns, you get the issue of they've paid their debt to society, should they have it restored. Meanwhile, they have proven themselves to be more violent than the average bear. Aaron and I do not have any violent felony convictions, or any felony convictions at all, and most people do not. And so therefore there is an elite club that they are in that is not illustrious. And so the question is freedom versus safety in those instances. But in the case of most things like concealed carry permits or constitutional carry, being able to own whatever guns that you want to own, repealing the Hughes Amendment, all of these things are not making us safer. So therefore repealing them is not going to be putting any level of risk for the sake of freedom. But we could argue that maybe in the case of violent people possessing firearms, maybe. And even I'm fence sitting on that. You paid your debt to society.
I actually didn't expect a thoughtful response. I just thought you were going to go, nope, they're all dumb. Next.
Most of them are. One did pop to mind. It was a fun thought experiment. Next, move on.
Thinking, what's that doing on the Assorted Calibers podcast? I have no good segue to this. So we've talked about swatting, and Tiny has told his story, and now Oddball is here to explain in technical terms, how swatting works, why it's effective, and why the cops really can't do much about it.
Welcome to Oddball's Corner Pocket. In episode 237, Tiny told a story about how he got swatted not once, but twice. Weer'd mentioned that he sort of understood how people get away with this sort of stuff, but was a little unclear. I thought I would take the time to explain how this stuff works and why the police don't do more to combat it. So, just in case you didn't listen to that episode, let's quickly go over what swatting is. Swatting is, put simply, calling the police, reporting that something is happening at your target's address, with the hope that the police will send the door kickers over, bash in your target's doors, and generally make your target miserable. Hostage situations are popular stories, as are active shootings. Obviously, this is a horrendous thing to do, and I wouldn't want to associate with anyone that thinks otherwise. Tiny's experience is the best case scenario. The police called him, asked if everything was all right, and sent around a couple squad cars just to make sure that everything was good. Worst case scenario is that the cops bust down the door and end up shooting and killing one or more of the folks that happen to be at the location. Unfortunately, this has happened, and has even happened to folks that weren't the intended target. Unfortunately, this has become a thing to do against people you don't like among certain circles. One of those groups is competitive gaming. Possibly the most famous instance involved an online game of Call of Duty in 2017. In that particular case, the address that was swatted was not the address of the intended victim, and unfortunately the owner of that residence was shot and killed. There have also been a number of instances involving Twitch streamers. The motives vary from people deciding that they don't like that streamer and want to shut them down, to simply wanting the bragging rights of disrupting something. Similarly, a number of YouTubers, specifically news and political commentators, and celebrities now have to deal with swatting as a fact of life. The individual that immediately comes to mind is Tim Pool, who, at least for a while, was regularly getting swatted. Fortunately, the local law enforcement caught on quickly and started putting in special procedures when someone called in something that dealt with his property specifically. So, why does this work? Why do the police blindly fall for these calls? Why aren't folks going to jail for this stuff? Well, as to why the police fall for it, it's really easy. The police have to assume that the person on the other end of the phone is telling them the truth. Showing up to a house all dressed up to find no party is a lot easier to explain than ignoring a call of an active shooter, only to later discover that it was real and folks died while you were staying safe at home. Look at the amount of crap that the Uvalde police rightfully received over not charging in against a school shooter. Now imagine the reaction if they had gotten the call and the response was, yeah, right, click. Now, for the question of how does it work, that's also pretty simple. Someone calls in and makes the report. The more drama they can put into their voice and details, the better. All that's needed is to convince someone in a call center that what you're telling them is real and that the situation is dire. People ask about caller ID, but that's really not as useful as you might think. First off, surprisingly, a lot of 911 call centers, especially in rural areas, are still working on implementing caller ID in the first place. So the folks working the phones don't even have that available to them. Secondly, with the proliferation of cell phones, It's not unusual for someone to move to a new area and keep their old phone number. For example, I know someone that has lived in Nashville for years, but his personal cell phone still sports a Mississippi area code. Lastly, as Weer'd alluded to, there's always caller ID spoofing. Caller ID spoofing is when someone causes the phone system to display a different phone number on the target's caller ID than is currently assigned to the phone that they're calling from. Specifically, spoofing is usually used when the caller is trying to conceal their identity. This is something that is really common with the types of loan forgiveness calls that Weer'd has fun playing with on the blooper reels. While someone could build what's called an orange box in hacking circles, it's honestly quite easy to spoof a phone number. The truth is that the caller ID system is actually designed specifically to allow it, as there are, in fact, legit reasons to do this. For example, a financial company may outsource their loan payment reminder calls to a company that runs a large call center. Obviously, it would be a good idea for the caller ID to show Bob's Savings and Loans instead of Carl's Call Center, with the added bonus that if someone decides to call back using the displayed number, they will get sent to Bob's call center that handles the incoming calls. Also, it's been used with VoIP services like Google Voice, where Lord only knows where the call actually ends up connecting to the destination's local phone system. Unfortunately, this means that spoofing a number is fairly trivial, and there's even phone apps and services that will do it for you. If anyone asks, no, I'm not going to link to any of them in the show notes. Lastly, the big question, why don't the police do more to find and punish folks that swat people? Sadly, the answer basically comes down to manpower. In most jurisdictions, swatting someone is basically considered falsifying a police report. While this is often a felony, as it is here in Tennessee, it's a low-level felony and not exactly a sexy bust. The sad truth is that police departments are often overworked and understaffed. There has to be a balance of how much time they spend on any given case. An incident where no one is hurt rates about as high as a stolen car or similar theft. Anyone that has been a victim of one of these crimes can tell you just how much you can expect the police to do beyond writing up a report. Add to that many swatting incidents involve multiple jurisdictions. The call often originates from outside the city, county, or state the target is in. Heck, add VoIP calling and VPNs, it's not too much of a reach for the call to involve other countries. Getting multiple departments involved on a case is one of those things that's famously difficult. Again, if no one was physically harmed, yeah, that's not happening. Oh, and there's the possibility that if spoofing and VPNs are involved, that they might have to get the FBI's cyber unit involved. I've met the two agents assigned to cybercrime here in Nashville, and they're good guys. And they seem pretty sharp, but they're two guys for all of Tennessee. You do the math. Incidentally, swatting reminds me a lot of bomb threats. Due to the high Jewish population of the grade school I went to, we regularly received bomb threats. Even though the staff, the kids, the police, and even the police dogs knew that there wasn't a bomb, we had to treat each call seriously. Each one of those calls were a Class D felony, but to the best of my knowledge, almost no one ever got caught making the calls. The only exception that I know of was when the receptionist that answered the phone recognized the voice of the caller and simply told him to come to her office. Oh, the guy that swatted someone over a Call of Duty game and ended up getting some random person killed? Yeah, he's one of the ones that the police did go after, and he is currently spending 20 years in jail for that, and 30 bomb threats and some other charges. Interestingly, he was actually not one of the two folks that were directly involved in the dispute, and those two guys both got under 2 years of jail for being part of it and trying to cover things up after it went sideways. I hope that this was informative. If you want to read more of my thoughts, I can be found at gunscarstech.com. And if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts for future segments, I can be reached at oddball@gunscarstech.com or on the ACP Facebook page. Until next time, have a good one.
So another famous person that was swatted was David Hogg.
Really? This is the first I've heard of this.
Yeah, I've got some links in the show notes, but Tim Pool ended up finding out who they were. He didn't identify them because he anonymously interviewed them for his show. Interesting enough, tie to Tim Pool, someone who has been well known for being swatted, and this was before any of the times he had been swatted. And what interesting aspect was that the hackers who were admitting to have swatted him had absolutely no dog in the fight as far as gun control goes. They didn't care about guns or the Second Amendment in any way, shape, or form. The reason why they swatted David Hogg was he was a prominent public figure at the time. And this was, of course, at the peak of David Hogg's media appearances, when he was on the news like every night.
When he was living high on the hog.
Mm-hmm. But yes, he was swatted, and thankfully for luck.
Your lack of laughter pains me, Weer'd.
Well, your joke hurt me too. So now we're even. But yeah, luckily David and his family were not home at the time, and so it literally the police showed up to an empty mansion, and that was it. So that was the end of that. No one was harmed. But as Oddball noted, there have been people killed because of this crap. And yeah, it sounds like he didn't give the specific information, but I have heard from now multiple sources. I know Alan on the Squirrel Report has said that spoofing a caller ID is extremely easy. So it's easy for them to cook up your name and home phone number on the caller ID, and then again, what are they going to do? Say, "Nuh-uh, prove it" to someone who's saying that they're going to kill their family or going to start shooting people from their upstairs window or whatever. No, they're going to send the officers, and then God forbid somebody steps out on their porch to go get their newspaper, and somebody thinks they see a furtive gesture. Ugh, it's just ugly crap. So to go further down the rabbit hole of abusive technology, Xander is going to give the finger to so-called smart guns.
A lot is made of the so-called smart guns that are promoted by mostly anti-gunners or people who are part of the firearms community but really don't understand how they work. By and large, there are 3 different methods of these controls. To summarize, the smart gun is locked from use and disabled until activated by some device or sensor. The earliest have had either a wristwatch or a ring, which would activate a reed switch or similar magnetic activated sensor to essentially turn the gun on. The Weer'd has noted in the past that these types can be easily bypassed with a simple, reasonably strong magnet, such as you can find in child's toys, magnetic latches for cupboards, and your local hardware store, or even the hardware aisle of a big box store. The faults with those are numerous, of course, and then there's the so-called gold standard of a fingerprint lock. At my current employer, there is a biometric, aka fingerprint scanner, to use the time clock. few weeks ago, I got a cut right down the center of my index finger, which I use to clock in and out with. And boy, howdy, did that make things rough for clocking in and out. Multiple scans, not to mention having to have that spot as clean as possible, and given that I work in a greasy, dirty environment, that added a layer of problems. Obviously, gloves will render them inoperable, and judging by the feedback, percentage of quality usually isn't running that great to begin with. Just imagine if a person were to touch up their makeup and didn't use their fingers, or perhaps put a little bit of Vaseline on their nose for the winter. That could easily cause that sensor to fault out. All this, of course, is overlooking the real problem. Most of what the proponents think of is the immediate moment, the moment of interaction with someone you need to use a firearm to dissuade from committing a crime against one's person. Longer term, however, once you have physical access, it's yours. It takes just a screwdriver or such to open up a electronics device, and the screwdrivers, of course, have to be commercially available. So-called security screws, you can get screwdriver bits for those at any hardware store. Again, it just is the tiniest bit of slowdown, and when you've got time and a device, you are in the device. At which point, the so-called smart gun features can be disabled, either removed completely and replaced with a linkage that would be very simple to fabricate without any special tooling whatsoever, or can be modified with a little bit of soldering, such that, or perhaps even a software modification, so that, for example, the fingerprint sensor would register any contact as a legitimate user. So overall, these features are unsafety measures. They disable the tool that must operate in the moment as the controls are activated by the user, legitimate user no less, or bad things will happen. I view vehicles in much the same way. If I turn the steering wheel, the wheels must turn to the degree that I turn the wheel. If I apply the brakes, the brake pads must be applied. If I push down the accelerator, more power must be delivered to the wheels. Admittedly, conditions might not be the greatest, and so the vehicle might not do what I intend to, which is go straight and smooth down the road. However, that is on me as the vehicle operator. That is what training is for, which is a very low bar. If you don't believe me, drive down any road in the U.S. Thank you. And therefore, when the trigger is depressed by my finger, the firearm must operate. It must fire. It is up to me as the user of the firearm to ensure that the bullet goes where it needs to go and not in a direction that will cause harm to a person who is not intending to harm me through injury or destruction of property. The tendency of anti-gunners to blame the object and not the person manifests here by trying to lock up the firearm and remove it from common use, while leaving the problems which result in people making bad life choices. Okay, so in the end, as noted by recent Supreme Court decisions, the requirement to own a firearm must be a very low bar outside of material cost, and the training and proper use and awareness of law is, as in all other aspects of life, up to the firearms owner. A criminal will do as a criminal does, by definition. A law-abiding person will do their best to be law-abiding. And in the end, people who are anti-gun mostly spend their efforts doing things that simply mess with the law-abiding, rather than truly solving the problems that result in people wishing to do harm to others in the process of taking lives and property. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
This is something that I see very consistently when somebody rolls out the latest smart gun technology. It's almost always like software and hardware engineers with like zero background in guns or gun design. And so they make stuff like the Armatix pistol, which is just a pile of crap gun that's extremely expensive. And they have like really, really dumb technology in it. Like that gun is just an RFID. So it's literally just a lock and key, but just a lock and key that's got batteries and does nothing good for it. It's no different than my Smith & Wesson revolvers that have the Hillary hole where you can lock the gun up. Had you not heard that before?
No.
The internal locks were put into Smith & Wesson revolvers. I don't know if officially came forward, but it was in cahoots with the Clinton administration. Essentially, Smith & Wesson, I believe they were owned by a British company at the time. They ended up selling it cheap to the current owners, who are very, very adamant to that was crap and we are not going to do that ever again. They started doing a lot of collusion with, including making smart gun technology, to put locks in their guns as a means to appease the Clinton administration so that they would eat them last. And so yeah, the Smith & Wesson Zit, which is another name for it. If you look at a modern Smith & Wesson revolver, often right above the cylinder latch, you'll see a black dot with a little line that looks like a scratch. It's ugly. It's just miserable looking. And that is frequently referred to as the Smith & Wesson Zit or the Hillary hole. And it is just a little crappy key lock that you can use it's like a handcuff key, but not quite, that you can just stick in and turn it and it locks the hammer into the position that it's in. And so the gun is locked up and quote unquote safe. And it's not a very good lock and it's not very useful. And there's been some like very, very dangerous malfunctions that have happened with it. But that was, that's Smith & Wesson's choice. The overall recommendation is if you have a gun with the Hillary hole, don't ever use it, because the more you use it, the more you're going to break in those parts and the smoother it's going to be and the easier it is for it to lock itself up by itself under recoil. So if you keep it all rough and unused, there's less chance of it interfering with the gun function. But again, this is stuff that they come up with that is not helpful. I actually found a video a long, long time ago. I don't know if I could find it again, but this guy was like a software engineer and he was a big Stargate fan. And so he had a PS90 and he had put I think it was a fingerprint reader on it to make it a smart gun. And it was a pile of crap. Like, it took forever to read his fingerprint before he could shoot. It was just for the PS90. It had like multiple malfunctions during the interview. And then the big kicker was at one point they're out driving in his car and he clearly had the airbag removed from the car. So yeah, you're all about the safety of your gun, where accidental gun deaths are like in the like low hundreds every year in this country. All the guns we've got, and only a couple hundred people die from that. Like I bet more people are killed by bears than are accidentally shot and that are killed accidentally by guns in this country. And yet he's driving around in an automobile with a disabled airbag.
48 fatal bear attacks in North America from 2000 to 2017.
Okay, so fatal bear attacks are a little bit worse than accidental gun deaths, but or a little better than accidental gun deaths. But we are still dealing with the tragedy of very small numbers. Oh, another point that I wanted to make is on smartphones. When I did my last Fisk talking about talking about the biometrics and all that, I remember there was a senator who was talking about how well her phone worked for biometrics and why can't we put that in guns. And I would note that at the time, my the phone that I was using had a fingerprint scanner, and it would not work if my hands were wet or dirty. And there was a couple of times when I had cut myself. Well, it was for one reason or another. So there was my fingerprint was damaged, and so therefore it wouldn't read my fingerprint. Now my current phone has the Face ID, and that one, when it works wonderfully, and then it doesn't work if there's like bad lighting, if I'm wearing sunglasses, and of course there are still instances like I've been at my doctor's office where they require you to wear masks while you're in the waiting room and all of that. And so I pick up my phone and hold it to my face, and it doesn't know who I am because I'm wearing a mask. So yeah, a lot of these biometric technologies, you think it's a good idea. You know, Xander talked about working on the farm, get a whole bunch of like grease or dirt or stuff in your fingerprint, and now your gun's not going to work. You get wet, you're in the rain. I can't defend myself because it's raining. Just not great ideas. Not smart.
Well, you will know when proper smart gun technology has arrived because the police will adopt it.
That is an absolute great note, is all of the places that have proposed smart gun legislation, all of them have exempted the police. And I will note, I don't know the statistics, but I do know that you hear an awful lot about cops losing control of their firearm because they struggle with suspects and things like that. And so these are the people who would probably most benefit from smart gun technology, because if their gun gets knocked out of their hands, the person wouldn't be able to turn with it, or if they managed to get it out of their holster, it would not be able to be used against them or stolen and used in other crimes. And yet every time smart gun technology laws come through, the police representation let the lawmakers know, you won't be putting us on this. We don't want any part of it.
It's because, at least right now, for the reasons we've listed, smart guns have a tendency not to go bang when you need them to go bang.
Mm-hmm.
And so the police officers are going, nope, we want a dumb gun that'll work as we want, when we want. So that is your, not necessarily a canary in the coal mine, but that is it's your bellwether, which is, I think, a goat.
I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm pretty sure it is. Let me look it up here. Yes, the term derives from the Middle English, which referred to the practice of placing a bell around the neck of a castrated ram, leading a flock of sheep. A shepherd could then note the movements of the animals by hearing the bell, even when the flock was not in sight.
Look at that. Well, there, Aaron, you are smarter than smart gun technology and the people that support it.
I just know how to Google.
You know who else is smarter than smart gun technology?
Our listeners.
Our listeners, each and every one of you guys, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this. And thanks to all of you, but also a very special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. If you want to become a Patreon supporter and maybe listen to Aaron and I talk about trans rights in the ACP Mag Dump, you can become a Patreon patron by going to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Again, you get access to our Mag Dump, you get access to the ACP blooper reels, and the ACP film tracks.
It's Aaron and me, not Aaron and I.
I done talk good.
Because you don't say listen to I, you say listen to me.
I know how
so it would be Aaron and me.
I know how the rules work. I just don't follow them. I'm a rebel.
More like rabble. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends both online and off.
And if you happen to be on Apple Podcasts, I'm making a call out. The Red, Blue, and Brady podcast is desperately in need of reviews. Leave a very thoughtful and truthful review with them. They've only got 22 right now. A little bit will go a long way. I get a blog. It's weerdworld.com. That's weerdworld.com. And I'm also on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
Well, sure, Amigura, I'm a cute little leprechaun, and Weer'd is too farty. Our Elvire is assorted, and so be our podcast. Happy St. Paddy's Day, everyone.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. She's not wrong.